As part of your Science Initial Teacher Education programme this year, we asked you to try and create a socio-scientific inquiry activity for your Key Stage 3 11 to 14-year-old students. Can you tell us a little bit about what you decided to do?
So I came up with the question myself because it was sort of glaringly obvious, I felt, in that the question was, in a school of 1,300 pupils, why do only 3 cycle to school? So I sort of came up with that myself, but had the intention of, because I don't have the answers, and I don't even have necessarily good questions to find out the answers, I got a group of kids together, well, it was a class, a Year 10 class, to sort of inquire to the rest of the school why that is and how we could change that. So they themselves had to come up with various questions that we sort of categorised into things like, is it to do with danger, is it to do with a lack of incentive, is it to do with a lack of money? And then they went off and made questionnaires and investigated out like the surroundings area and various solutions and tried them out.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Jabal, what about you?
So I developed one along the lines of the particular curriculum topic we're covering, which was dealing with the different fractions of crude oil was made from them. And a particular one was plastic, and we looked at how long plastic lasts in the environment and the impact of plastic pollution. And so the question that we developed mostly by my incentive was that, why are so many plastic bottle drinks sold in the school? And they were very enthused at first, but they found it difficult because they felt it was a bit too controversial and that they'd be rubbing up against like the school management or the canteen staff and that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. And Maria?
Oh, my activity was based on why do teenagers smoke, and they had to create their own survey using SurveyMonkey. So basically, they came up with all different types of questions, and then they sent this survey to at least 15 other teenagers, either in the group or outside the group, and then they gathered that information to create their own campaign to try and stop some other students, teenagers usually, from start smoking.
Okay. So cycling, recycling, smoking, interesting issues. A couple of the scenarios were triggered very much by the curriculum. Claire, yours was triggered a little bit more about what you observed in the school and in some senses your interest in why don't we cycle. Okay, so I mean, Javar, you've alluded to this already a little bit. In some senses there was some challenge, some issues in terms of taking the idea forward, but could you all say a little bit about, you know, what went, Claire, you know, you planned yours and you thought about how it would be. Mm-hmm. What could you see as a benefit of working with an activity like that in your school?
So specifically to the school, a benefit was that it was easier to look at things like dangers outside of the school because it was because of the area that it was in. So it was quite good that I could use this activity to take them outside and do what felt like real inquiry.
Okay. And do you think they would have, did you talk with them about it at all? Were you able to take it into the classroom at all? You didn't, did you? No. Okay. Now when you did, Javar, you got that, this is potentially a little bit controversial within the school grounds, but they could see why it might be a useful line of inquiry, so to speak. Yeah. Were there any other benefits that you could see? What went well with it?
So I think that even though they were a bit intimidated in the end by it, I think the fact that they felt, so it was scary for them because they kind of felt they had some power. So almost paradoxically, the fact that they felt they could change something scared them. So I thought it was good for them to feel as though what they were doing actually mattered, even though it did put them off. Okay. So it's interesting because they do a lot of work in classroom that just feels like it doesn't matter at all. But the fact that they actually thought it could do something, I think, excited them a bit, even though it was a bit scary as well. So
yeah.
I thought that was good.
Okay. So of the three of you, Maria, you have managed to carry yours out into a lesson. I mean, Javal, Claire, what do you think about what Maria's done? How did she manage to do that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I obviously didn't get around to doing it myself, and so I can't really see necessarily where the struggles would be when it comes to actually implementing it. So I don't know if you've got anything to say.
Well, in the lesson, because in this case it was indoors, we didn't have any other issues with like going out as in your case. But they really engaged with like the topic, especially because I think, especially at that age, they pretty much are interested in smoking and drugs and things like that. And because it was a foundation group as well, I thought it was very easy for them to relate this to the scientific part as well. Because we studied just like very quickly at the beginning the different parts of the respiratory system so that they can know exactly what can get damaged, like all the effects of smoking, why is that bad. But instead of like going like very thorough in that, you're like, okay, you know that is bad. So why would people smoke then? Then they come up with their own questions and they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. And like I have some friends that may smoke, you know, and I felt that they really liked that part. And then because they were using computers and they always like love using computers, and they were actually creating a real survey and they were like sending that to each other and answering that online and getting the results. So they was like very, very real. And then on top of that, they were using that information to do something else. So I think they really liked that part. It was just like the time constraints what was kind of
I was also going to ask, when you like when it comes to actually doing it, were you a bit worried about the fact that you maybe were off curriculum or that you didn't have enough science in there? Because I felt a little bit like that was an issue with mine. And like, was that in the back of your mind, or could you just sort of do it and not think about that?
We had a starter in which we introduced, they had to label diagram with the different parts of the respiratory system and stuff. But I think now we have to repeat this again. Maybe we had like another lesson before that so they can get into all this scientific part and then just spend a whole lesson doing the survey, because that way it can be longer, they can even discuss more between them. And you know, also when they get the answers back and they had to analyze data for a foundation group, that's pretty tough. So they may need some more time to do this. And then
Maria, I was interested in the answers that came back as well. Were they surprised by any of the results that they got back from their friends and their family?
I think most of them thought people were lying, actually, because they may think like, I know that person may have smoked, and some of the questions were like, have you ever smoked? Why would you do that? You feel like peer pressure? Well, in their words, but basically saying, why do you smoke if you know that's bad? Or if you do, how would you quit smoking? Things like that.
So they were questioning, in some sense, the honesty of the responses.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if they can get all the information back without knowing who actually answered these. That's good as well.
Okay, interesting. Interested, obviously, when you run an activity like this, or you've even planned it, Claire, and you know you've all spent a lot of time planning it. Would you do anything differently if you were to run it again? You know, what did you learn, especially you, Maria, I suppose?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I will try and get like an introduction lesson or something, so that then we can spend the whole lesson during the survey and analysing what they got and like having more discussion between them maybe.
So the time you were able to spend was an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, Javal, have you thought about that particularly as well? Because of course you reached a little bit of a wall with yours, but would you do it differently in any way next time?
Yeah, so that's something I struggled with, because I was wondering how to maintain the interest without making it like controversial. So how do you make it less controversial but simultaneously still interesting? And I thought maybe on a smaller scale, for example, so instead of actually questioning why the school was selling plastic bottles, maybe instead ask about like bringing in your own bottles. Like a less confrontational question basically would have probably framed it much more nicely. So I think it's probably the wording, and I chose the question, to be honest. It's probably my fault that I came across as being so confrontational.
Okay. Right. And Claire, anything to add on that and doing things a bit differently next time?
I think if I was going to do it again, I wouldn't make my own question. I would find a way to get them to come up with it. Maybe a sort of overall topic, probably something environmental, and then see what they come up with.
It's a challenge, isn't it, though? Eliciting students' questions and then being able to manage in the classroom the follow-through. Can you explain for us a little bit about how supportive your teachers were and your subject mentors in terms of what you were trying to do? Did they support the planning? What did they think about you trying to carry out this kind of work with your students?
So obviously I didn't actually do this lesson, but I had experience of other things, such as taking kids out of the classroom to do other things and things that were slightly off curricular. And in doing that, I would say I had quite a mixed response from teachers, specifically some of them weren't really sure, they couldn't see it's necessarily its worth because it was quite far away from the curriculum, they felt, or it wasn't actually sitting down doing exam paper practice, which was sort of the done thing in that school, I think, because it's outstanding and it's got really high results, but at the same time it's sort of a lot of time had to be spent on exam papers. So yeah.
So the teachers perhaps didn't value it as
much
as...
or understand it, maybe it was new to them.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. And Javal?
So mine contrasted heavily with Claire's, I guess, because my SM was very supportive of the idea. Similarly, I didn't actually get to go through with it, but she was very supportive. She thought it was a good idea. She encouraged me to pursue it further. So.
Okay, great. And Maria?
Yeah, my subject mentor also thought that was a very good idea, and she was like very willing to keep the idea and all the resources in the department to carry on the activity in the following year. So I think they're using this activity this year as well.
Okay, because I was obviously going to ask you, you're very near the end of your training year now, and how you perhaps see your futures with socio-scientific issues. Have you been thinking about that at all, and how you might take this forward into the early years of your career?
Yeah, I've actually done some other activities after this one because I thought it was really good and they really engaged, and it's not necessarily something that is in like textbook in the curriculum, but this will give them a really good idea of what they're going to find outside in the real world. So I think, I may use this more often with some other like probably controversial issues like we did like abortion one, and
you can see the potential for various things. You've sort of alluded to this a little bit already, but one final question really was the pupils' responses and reactions to working with them in this way. Could you say just a few final thoughts on that?
I thought the increased interest was like very, very evident. So I think once it's well done, you can very easily engage pupils who otherwise would find it very dry. Because, I mean, anything that's related to what they see around them and that they can even tell their parents or friends about is always something that is far more interesting to students. And so, similar to Maria, I've tried similar stuff in other lessons, and I've gotten like much better responses. Like if I want to like enthuse a new class, I try to do something socio-scientific by making myself seem interesting for like one lesson.
Claire, you're agreeing?
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem to be the way to get attention. Just to like see what you can do to relate it to the rest of the world and to yourself and to things that they think are important. So discussion.
I think this is part of like promoting and like encouraging their curiosity, and this is going to be engaging because it's them posing the questions and just talking about things that they're interested in. So basically.
And I was going to say, there's something via Ofsted, isn't there, that we have to now put in our lessons? I can't remember what it is, SPMC or something? Is that right? No.
Don't know.
Okay, well, I'd been told that, and then a part of that is like, you actually have to show in a lesson plan that you've done something.
It's like the spiritual, moral.
Yeah.
I've heard about this as well.
And I think that this fits really well into that you could actually show that you've done it quite easily.
Well, there we are. Well, good luck with all of that, and thank you very much for sharing your experiences of the SSIBL project this year with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.